Hello, this is Pete. I'm with EveningsHadowsTarot.com. If you'd like to get in contact with me or get a reading, you can pay through PayPal. The information is below on my website, and you find a link below this. This board I painted, and I don't do as many. I haven't done really brief cards with this reading, but what I want to do is to talk to you and get your opinion. This is about my father and mother, and they had both passed away many years ago. But I told a story about my mom and the song Crazy being played at the cemetery on the radio, and you might find that interesting. This story is about my father, and it's something interesting. Now, I'm a senior citizen, and not a lot of paranormal things have happened in my life, just a few. And one was a room that was haunted in my house. One was my mother and the song Crazy. And this one is about a bird. I was at the cemetery. I had a van, and I put flowers out, and in this area it's very acceptable to use silk flowers, artificial flowers, because they last longer. There are two vases at their gravesite. My mother had designed the tombstone, and when she passed away, I had her name added on the other side where she was buried. And I was out there. It was a beautiful day, and I had pulled the van up the road next to where her grave was. There's a gazebo right there that they had built later on, close to their grave. And so there was a couple, an older couple, on the other side of the gazebo, and they were working on their grave, and I was putting out flowers and cutting it, and that was very important to my mother, that we take care of my father's grave. And then while I lived in that small town, I took care of both of their graves, and then paid someone to take care of them after that. But I moved. My dad, let me give you a little bit of information about him. His folks were from England, and they had moved to the United States. Their families had moved there several years before that, and they had a place in Virginia, out of Roanoke, up in the hills, beautiful area there. And when he was growing up, he had to take care of the fireplaces. He was the youngest boy, and there were 11 children, by the way. Some were grown at the time he was doing this, and had gone on their way, so they weren't all at home. But he said he had to build 7 fires, keep those going to keep their house warm, because that's the way they heated their home. So he hated fireplaces, and he wouldn't allow us to have a fireplace. I did have a fireplace after he passed away, but while he was alive, he would insist we weren't going to have a fireplace. But as he was growing up, he had trained a horse to pull the logs in, and he would ride that horse and pull the logs in and cut them up and do that. Another thing that he did, which I found interesting, was he loved animals, and he taught me to love animals. I had all kinds of pets all my life, and before we moved to the ranch and everything, he had this love for animals too. He raised canaries, and he did have other types of birds. If you'd find a bird that was maybe crippled or broken wing or something, he would fix it and get it going and take care of it, and he had them for pets. But he did raise canaries. And one of the interesting stories was that he had a canary that used to sing, and he said it just had a beautiful singing voice, and it would sing all the time. And the man at the grocery store, a small grocery store where they lived near them. I believe it was near Floyd. There was this Floyd, Virginia. He had this bird cage and bought this bird from Dad, and he just loved that bird. The only thing he did was that it would sing all the time, and he would give it a cube of sugar every day as a reward, and he loved it. Well, that little bird got so fat that it quit singing, and my dad said, you know, I'll trade you that bird, trade another bird to you, but don't feed it sugar. And he said, okay. So they traded birds. He took it home. Of course, once it didn't have that sugar, it slimmed down and was a beautiful singer again. He told me that he had little owls that he had gotten when they were little, found, and maybe the parents had fallen out of a nest or something. So he had all kinds of birds, and had always raised them. When I was there working on their grave, I put the flowers out and everything, and I'd cut the wires, and I was trying to make it look as nice as I could for them, and I talked to them. And I said, I miss you two so much, and I'm doing okay without you. I'm making it. I have friends, and they keep me entertained, and I'm working awfully hard, and I had a business there, and I said, this is doing real well. And I said, I am really doing well right now, and I just talked to them, and so I looked up, and there was a bird circling. And in that area, there were lots of Catholic people buried. My father was Baptist, but there were a lot of Catholic people buried there, and they had beautiful crosses. And there was some very large crosses in that area. Stood up 6 foot taller or taller, and some were small. And so I'm standing there, and I noticed this bird at a distance. And I'd always looked at, noticing birds, and I was still talking to Mother and Daddy, and I, even though I don't know if they could hear me or not, but I was talking to them. And I saw this bird, and it was kind of circling, and it was a meadowlark. And the meadowlark flew over close to where I was, on the other side of this double grave. There's really 3 spaces. There's a space for me there. I would like to be buried there. And so it landed. And I was standing there real still, and I thought, well, that's unusual that a wild bird would land that close, on the other side of the grave. And I thought, well, there's all these tall statues here, not of people, but of crosses and things. And perhaps I'm being so still it just thinks I'm a statue. I don't know. And that bird looked at me, and I was glancing at it, and I kind of moved my hand like that because I thought, well, it'll fly away. And I moved my hand, and that bird just looked at me. And you're not going to believe this, but it jumped across that curbing there and went across both graves and stopped at my feet. And I thought, what is happening? Is this a dream? Because, wild birds just don't do that. Well, I put my hand down there, and I stuck my finger out, and I stuck my right hand, and I brought it up, and that little bird got on it, and it was fully grown, and it was beautiful. And I put it up close to my face, and I said, baby, are you okay? Is there something wrong? Well, I looked at it, and it was okay. And I thought, do you suppose it's eaten some of those berries? And there were berries there around that cemetery that if a bird sometimes would like to eat them, but it would kind of make them drunk, like somebody drinking wine or something. And so I looked at it, and I thought, no, its little beak isn't red, and it just seems to be healthy as it can be. And I looked over, and this older couple was on the other side of the gazebo, and they were watching, and they were both standing there just staring, and both of them had their mouths open. I said, did you see what just happened? And they said, yes. Is that your bird? And I said, well, no, it's just a wild bird. And they said, and it got on your finger? And I said, yes. They said, is something wrong with it? And I said, no, it doesn't appear to be. And I said, what do you think? And they said, well, I don't have any idea. And so I thought, well, goodness. And I had birds at home, by the way, and I had parrots. And so I thought, well, I'll go over and I put it in the van and shut the door. And I put my tools up, and I'm driving home. And I think, what am I supposed to do with this bird? You know, and I just think, this is just unreal, you know, that a wild bird would come to me out in the cemetery. So I pulled into the garage, and I went around to the back, and I thought, well, the first thing I'll do is open the double doors of the back of the van, and I'll get that bird out and take it in. I have an extra bird cage, and I guess I'm supposed to take care of this bird. Well, there was a breeze at that time close to our house. We live close to the lake, and there was more wind in that area than at the cemetery. And, you know, I opened both of those doors, and that bird flew out right above my head, and I had the garage door open, and it flew up. I stepped back and looked up, and, you know, most birds will fly over and land on a tree or something. They line up with the ground, you know. This bird flew out and up, and it kept going up, and it disappeared. I mean, that's how high it got up in the sky that I couldn't see it any longer. Now, there were a few little clouds there. I'm not saying that how far it went, I don't know. I just couldn't see it anymore. But that bird flew up there, and I never saw it again. I asked friends about it, and they said, I think that it was your dad sending you a message. And I said, you know, I thought about that because he used to raise birds. And they said, how else can you explain it? And I said, well, I thought it was drunk on those berries, and it wasn't that. And I said, I don't know. I said, why didn't it stay with me? And they said, he delivered his message. He was letting you know that he and your mother were okay on the other side, and they didn't know how to send a message to you, tell you you were talking to them, so he did it through this bird. And you know, when I moved over here, there were 3 doves that would stay on my front porch on a rocker. And I always thought it was Mother, Dad, and me. And I moved to this smaller house. They moved with me, or 3 others did. I think that's interesting. If you think that we get messages from the other side, or sent messages through animals or something, and you have a story, I'd love to hear it. And if you would reply below, I would love to hear that story. I can just tell you what happened to me, and maybe it was a coincidence, but I just believe that it was some way to get a message from the other side. And I do believe that we get messages from the other side, and I get them now through my tarot cards. I do readings of tarot cards, and I do 2 or 3 for me, sometimes a day. If I'm having trouble and I need advice, and I usually always get it. The only time I don't is if I ask a question that it doesn't want to answer, and I'm telling you, if it doesn't want to answer, it will block me. That seldom happens, but it's when I ask personal questions, like, what is going to happen to me? I'm getting older, I'm alone, what's going to happen? And you know it will block me, it won't tell me. But let me know if you think that was just a coincidence, or can explain that bird being friendly and then going out of my life, flying into my life and flying out of my life. Thank you so much for listening, and try to get watch some of my games that I have, and pick a card games and my other videos, and I'm trying to help people figure out ways to make it through the rough times, maybe by getting a job, just a little part-time job, maybe just paying their utilities. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you will reply. Thank you, and goodbye.